The girl Nancy, inspired by love, called her boyfriend to hear his opinion. "Tom, why didn't you tell me your decision? Too much time has passed. We need to decide everything once and for all. I can't wait any longer. Understand me?" Tom listened to Nancy's voice but couldn't find the words. He was too excited about this conversation, and he was already tired of all this. She has been forcing him to make a decision for a month, but Tom could not make a choice. Nancy, waited a little longer. "I need to decide something, just a couple of questions, but very important ones, and then we will make a decision together. Okay?" Nancy sighed heavily but said nothing more about it. She only said, "Tom, I love you very much. Remember this." Tom hung up without answering the girl to her confession. What could he say to her? That he was tired of her. This was partially true, but in his soul, there were still remnants of the old feelings that arose so swiftly and suddenly. Tom also loved Nancy once. Not like she did, but he loved in his own way. Only this now prevented him from getting rid of the girl once and for all. Tom plunged into the memory of those meetings, dates, walks, and nights of love, but then he turned dark. Again, those crazy nights of love led to a completely predictable ending. Nancy is pregnant now. Tom must decide the fate of not only the girl, but also their common child. Tom smiled bitterly. He imagined how his parents would react to the news of the baby. Their son was only 20 years old. He had not yet graduated from university, and suddenly he would have a child from some poor girl. And Nancy is only 18 years old. Her parents will probably be happy, of course. Any parents will be happy to place their daughter in a rich family. Tom breathed. He needs to decide everything in the near future. Otherwise, it will really be too late. But all the problems faded into the background when his parents told him in the evening that they were flying to Germany for 6 months on his father's business. Tom forgot about his girlfriend and her pregnancy. He only thought that he himself couldn't personally force her to have an abortion. So, let her decide what to do during his absence. He let it be on her conscience. If she gets rid of the child, then there will be no claims against him because he doesn't force her to do so. Tom quietly flew away 2 days later with his parents without even warning Nancy about his long absence. 6 months later, and his parents returned from Germany, but only for 2 weeks. Then they were going to fly to Italy. Tom called Nancy for a long time. No one answered the phone, and then he heard the faint voice of his girlfriend. "Nancy, hello. Forgive me for disappearing so suddenly. I had to urgently fly with my parents to Germany, and I stayed there for a long time as my parents had things to do. Excuse me for not warning you. It all happened so suddenly." There was silence in response. "Nancy, can you hear me?" "It's me, Tom," Nancy said quietly. "Yes, I can hear you. You disappeared so strangely, and I thought you left me. Are you back? Is this really you? Why have you been silent all this time and didn't call me? When can we meet? I need to tell you something, and this is very important." Tom agreed to the meeting, relieved to think that Nancy had had an abortion after all. But in the evening, he saw Nancy in the park with the stroller, and his heart began to beat faster. She still gave birth. What a nightmare, and what should he do now? Nancy looked exhausted. She lost a lot of weight. There were bruises under her eyes, but her eyes shone with joy from meeting her beloved and hope that things would still get better. "How glad I am to see you, and thank God that you showed up. I thought something happened to you. We have a son. I named him Lucas." Tom looked in horror into the stroller. She gave birth early, so he thinks Nancy's smile faded as she continued to speak with tears in her eyes. He was born prematurely, probably because of my worries. I gave birth to him just 2 weeks ago. I was so worried about you. I kept thinking about you, where you could be, what could happen to you. After the birth, I was told that the child has serious health problems and would be disabled. I'm so glad you're with us now. I really need your support. Tom, we'll be fine now, right? But Tom remained silent, and then he backed away a few steps. Nancy, I'm flying to Italy soon, most likely for good. I didn't ask you to give birth without me. You made your own choice. You gave birth to a disabled person. So grow him alone. You are on your own now. I don't want this baby. Forgive me, but I have to go. Good luck. Goodbye. He turned away and left. But Nancy stayed where she was. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She was very hurt to hear this. She imagined for a moment that everything was fine, because Tom was back, but now she again didn't know how to live on. Many years have passed since that day. Tom climbed the stairs breathing heavily. Finally, he reached the hospital age. Makes itself felt, and he's only 50 years old. But he felt old because of an unfortunate injury. The fact is that he fell from a height at a construction site. He took a deep breath and opened the front door. He sat near the doctor's office and absent-mindedly looked at the door, occasionally paying attention to the shoes of people passing by. Now, he will see old worn shoes like this. Then, he will see expensive shoes, which he once had in his youth. But those days are long gone. After the death of his parents, Tom quickly spent the entire fortune. His father's business was taken from him. More than 15 years, he has been wandering from one job to another. An incomplete education didn't give him a single chance to get a normal job for 10 years. He has been working at a construction site, earning his living. And after a recent injury, he will now have to live only on a disability pension. A wonderful old age awaits him suddenly. The office door opened and a young nurse came out and immediately approached the man. "Mr. Wright, come in." Tom carefully rose from the bench and walked into the doctor's office limping. The young doctor wrote something in a notebook. Tom sat on the chair near the doctor and began to look at the name badge on the doctor's coat, which had the name Lucas Johnson on it. He thought it was a nice name. The doctor finished writing and looked at Tom. "I'm listening to you." Tom sighed and was about to start a story, but suddenly his eyes landed on a photograph on the doctor's table. It depicted a young and happy girl. She hugged a man who looked at her lovingly. Tom held his breath because it was Nancy. Tom felt his heart began to beat faster. He looked at the photo and said, "Excuse me, but can you answer one question for me? Who's this girl in this photo?" The doctor frowned, but when he looked at the photo, a slight smile appeared on his lips. "This is my mother. Many people ask me who it is. She's very beautiful, isn't she? I love this photo very much. I like the way my father looks at her. This is a real love." Tom looked at the doctor in shock. Then he looked back at the photo. It was Nancy, the girl who at the age of 20 made him a father, who gave birth to a son, Lucas, whom Tom abandoned then, and now his son sits before him. Lucas Johnson is definitely his son. This cannot be a mistake. Suddenly, the doctor continued, "Do you know why I still love this photo? Because this is the day my father adopted me." Tom said in surprise, "He adopted you? Isn't that your own father?" "Yes, this is not my own father, but he's dearest to me. This man saved my mother from a terrible fate and madness when I was born. The doctor said I would be disabled, My father was able to prove to everyone that they were wrong in my diagnosis. My father is very smart by the way he is. Now a professor and a very respected person. Him and my mother fell in love with each other. And I have not met people who have even half loved each other as much as they love each other. I never knew who my real father was. Who was this man who left my mother and left me in trouble? But it doesn't matter, because I'm happy to have a father like mine. Now I couldn't wish for better. Tom looked at his son with wide eyes, with every word like a knife cut into his heart. He felt that he was burning with shame, and it seemed to him that it was written on his forehead. Here's the same scoundrel who abandoned his child, but of course it was just a figment of his imagination. The doctor continued his story. I am very happy that I followed into the footsteps of my father. I only chose medicine because I wanted to be like him. But now, I know that this is my calling, and I can be proud of myself thanks to my father. I will never get tired of thanking my mother for choosing the best father in the world for me. And Lucas finished his story. He looked away from the photo of his parents and looked directly into the eyes of the patients. Tom looked his son straight into the eyes, and he felt so ashamed that he wanted to fall through the ground, disappear, run away, but his body was stoned and couldn't budge. The doctor said, "I'm sorry that I was distracted by pleasant memories, but they're so happy that I want to share them with everyone. Excuse me, why did you make an appointment with me? Tell us about your problem, I'll be happy to help you." But Tom slowly shook his head. Then with difficulty he got up from his chair and muffled, "I made a mistake. I have no complaints to you, and I don't need advice. Sorry to disturb you. I'd better go." Lucas Johnson looked at the strange patient with surprise. This had never happened before. In his practice, Co's line up for an appointment with him, and this very strange man suddenly just leaves without even telling about his problem. The doctor found this very strange. Tom, meanwhile, left office, and as soon as possible tries to leave this hospital. When he got outside, he carefully descended the steps and then walked along the sidewalk, not even realizing where he was going. All the years of his life lashed through his mind. Here is a young guy who has the most fashionable things. Here he is, a teenager who shows off popular gadgets to the classmates. Here's a guy who met a beautiful girl, Nancy. Here he lives in Italy, meets different girls there, and does not even remember the girl Nancy and his son whom he abandoned, and the accident that took his parents and everything he had. Then the years of hard work, the absence of a family, children, and everything that makes a person happy were stretched. The young woman angrily yelled at Tom when he accidentally brushed her shoulder. "Watch where you're going." But Tom couldn't see anything in front of him as his eyes were full of tears. Streamed down his cheeks, but he didn't wipe them away. His son, whom he so violently abandoned 30 years ago, was still standing before his eyes. That was for today's story. Please leave a like, and if you wanted to hear more stories, please subscribe to Storytime channel.